Good morning. Welcome to the Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee today on Tuesday the 30th of November. We will get underway. Good morning. We'll start with agenda item 1, comments from members of the public. I understand we do have Mr. Boswell here. We'll let you begin.
Good morning. Thank you very much for letting me speak. Appreciate Anne-Marie Coulthard bringing this to the committee's attention. Obviously, I've had lengthy discussions with people from the licensing committee and the council committee members themselves in reference to the changes for the taxi licensing that was introduced last year. Beginning of this year. My main concern over the policy is the level required for the new Versant test and the pass rate for applicants to actually be able to apply. Currently, in Grantham, there's over the bigger companies, CB taxis, auto cabs, amber cabs, premier cabs, and Grantham taxis themselves. There's 100 drivers. 56% of those are English. The other 44% are non-English. And we've now introduced a test that would eradicate probably 90% of that 44%, because they wouldn't be able to pass to the required standard that is now introduced. The Versant English test is discriminatory. The new policy, seriously, outlined in the initial impact assessment, flagged this policy change as being high under racial discrimination. And it's now acting as a blockade for anyone wanting to pursue this as a career. It's proved to be highly accurate in its early implementation. Candidates who have a good level of spoken English, but not natively English speaking, have passed the DBS, the knowledge test, the safeguard training.
Sorry, can I just get everyone to move their phones away from the mics? It's often mobile phones that cause interference. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
That's all right. So they've all passed all the training required. Currently, since the Versant test has been introduced, only 20% pass rate has been succeeded. New analysis stating now that this application of the policy statement will be carried out in equitable manner with all applications considered on their individual merits on a case-by-case basis. That's in Appendix 3 that you were given from Heather from licensing. This is not true because it's a pass or fail. There's no personal merit. They either pass the test or they fail the test. If they fail it, that's it. They have to pay again to do it, which is likely going to fail again. It's not something you can learn because it's on how you speak to a computer, and the computer then decides whether or not you're speaking well enough English to do this. People from Eastern European backgrounds, or European backgrounds in general, get their words mixed up as to how we speak. Words translated from English into another language, as we all know when we study French, Spanish, the sentence may go forwards as normal, but then when you translate it into the other language, the words will be jumbled up. So when they're translating it in their own heads, that's coming across. And this is what the Versant test picks up on, whether or not they get the sentence in the correct order. If they get it in the incorrect order, it's an automatic fail because it's an AI system that is trained to listen for the correct sentence. I do agree that a good understanding of English is required because obviously where to go, safeguarding, everything else. But the level doesn't need to be where it's at. I've got drivers that work for me that cannot pass this test. They already work and they're scoring 35, 40. I can converse with them perfectly fine, but they wouldn't be able to be a taxi driver now.
Mr. Boswell, I'm really sorry, but you've had your 3 minutes. We'll give you a few more seconds to kind of sum up.
That's pretty much it. Obviously, it just needs to be looked at to lower this level so that people can become a taxi driver. The trade is hurting already because of COVID. A lot of Eastern Europeans have gone back to their home countries. And now the ones that we do have living here that want to work, we can't recruit because they can't pass this test.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you very much for your time.
we are looking at this at agenda item 6, so we will kind of take your thoughts and comments into consideration.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have any other comments from the member of the public?
We have no more comments from members of the public, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item 2, apologies for absence.
We have received apologies from Councillor Ashley Baxter, and Councillor Amanda Wheeler will be substituting for Councillor Baxter. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further apologies?
Chairman, Councillor Linda Wootton has also sent her apologies.
Thank you very much. Item number 3, disclosure of interest. Members are asked to disclose any interests in matters for consideration at the meeting. Do we have any? No, lovely, thank you. Agenda item 4, action notes held from the meeting held on the 28th of September. Any comments? No, lovely, thank you. Agenda item 5, updates from the previous meeting. The committee is to consider actions agreed at the meeting held on the 28th of September. Do we currently have any updates of any actions? No, lovely, thank you. Agenda item 6, the review of the Hackney Carriage and Private Hire Policy, the English Language Skills Test. I'll ask Anne-Marie Coulthard to present this, please.
Yeah, good morning. I'm presenting in the absence of Councillor Linda Wootton this morning. So this item relates to the review of the Hackney Carriage and Private Hire licensing policy in respect of the English Language Skills Test. The existing policy was adopted on 12th January 2021, being effective from 1st April 2021. Policy provides the framework upon which the licensing authority delivers its functions in relation to Hackney Carriage and private hire licensing. This review has been undertaken to take into account feedback and the current pass rate of the English language test, as well as to implement a minor amendment by way of clarification to the paragraphs in the policy relating to the certificate of good conduct. Members will recall when the policy was last reviewed, the English language test element of the new driver requirement was altered to make it more robust and transparent. The test used is purchased from an external provider called Versant, which is used by a number of local authorities as shown in the report at paragraph 1.8. The National Statutory Taxi and Private Hire Vehicle Standards advise that all licensed taxi and private hire drivers are expected to possess proficient English language skill. English language skills are essential to avoid job-related misunderstandings, such as wrong directions and fare disputes. They must also be able to recognise safeguarding concerns, understand a customer's assistance needs, and be able to communicate with emergency services following an accident or medical emergency. The use of a test purchased from an external company ensures consistency, objectivity, and removes any concerns of unconscious bias for those applicants taking the test. The Versant English test requires a candidate to read accurately from a number of sentences from a screen, repeat a series of sentences that are read out via the system, answer questions in order to test comprehension, rearrange words and phrases into meaningful sentences, and converse in free speech for 40 seconds in response to open questions. The Licensing Committee considered the pass mark of the English language test at their meeting of 12th November 2021. Following discussion, the committee recommended that the score required be reduced from 58 to 54 out of 80. This is equivalent to the upper end of a B1 independent user, as detailed in Appendix 2 of the report. Secondly, in relation to the certificate of good conduct, a certificate of good conduct is obtained from the embassy of the country or countries that the applicant has lived outside of the UK for more than 6 months since the age of 10 years. This certificate is required as the Criminal Records Bureau checks only use records within the UK, and if the applicant has lived abroad, there will be a gap in their record. The proposed amendment clarifies that once a driver is licensed, At renewal, they will only need to produce the certificate if they have left the UK for more than 6 months during the currency of their licence. In summary, this report seeks feedback from the committee in relation to whether the current English test pass score, which is currently set at 58 and represents an independent user, is at the appropriate level, and the amendment to the wording of the certificate of good conduct to make it clear that at renewal only, those who have been abroad for 6 months within the last licensing period are required to obtain the certificate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this point, I'd just like to say that I also sit on licensing, so I have already discussed this with within the licensing committee. So I'm going to open it to committee members. Anyone got any comments? Councillor Dilks.
I'm a former member of the licensing committee, and I remember when this came up a couple of years ago, and there was concern within the within the committee about how we went about the test, and of course the bottom line is safety of passengers. That has to be the bottom line. But I do hear the comments that the gentleman makes, and it is concern if we're not going to have any taxi drivers or not enough taxi drivers. So I really just sort of ask your experience and others perhaps who are on the, I know Dean as a long-standing member of the licensing committee as well. And whilst I see that you have reduced the pass mark, what does that actually mean in terms of how many would have passed? Would that have got, does that do the job? Does that get more people through? Now, I don't want to lower the standards so far that, it makes it meaningless, but I just sort of question it, Thank you.
I am going to say at this point that I also question it. We have, it's difficult. Within the other committee, we have agreed to lower it. And I agree with that. But again, have we gone far enough? I do feel we have to maintain the standards, of course. And it's finding that balance. And I don't know if we're there yet or if we're not. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I wasn't writing notes and I'm trying to remember what you said exactly, but I think Mr. Boswell said that 90% of his English as an additional language drivers would fail the test. Is that right? 90%? Yeah, and these are people who drive for him that he trusts and knows to be good drivers. So to me, that means the test is not fit for purpose. If you can fail on getting words slightly in the wrong order, I would probably fail because I mix my words up in the order. I mean, AI can't do everything for us. So just in terms of my own preference for when I'm in a taxi, I quite like it when they can't speak English because I can just sit and relax and I don't have to listen to the views they've picked up from Talk Sport. I would rather have someone who drove well and spoke basic English that understood where I wanted to get to and could explain the fare. And I noticed on page 15 that other local authorities have dropped the pass mark as low as 46. If that's good enough for Bath and North East Somerset, why isn't that good enough for SKDC? And I know Mr. Boswell can't contribute, but I wonder if the pass mark dropped to 46, whether that would mean that more of his drivers would be able to pass.
Marie Coulthard.
Sorry, Chair, would it be helpful for me to add at this point that of the 5 tests that were taken, 4 have failed, 1 has passed. The average score was 46.
Thank you for that. Councillor Westcott. Okay, thank you. Just on a personal thing, sitting not as chair, just as a committee member, really. What I don't follow is that if licensing have agreed at 54, I don't understand why we can't, it's still in the same box of, we've got it set at 58, which is the higher box. We've dropped it down to a different box and different level. So I'm just unsure why we can't go to the lowest of that level rather than the middle, because it's still going to give us the standard that we're trying to achieve. Am I wrong? Please correct me if I'm wrong. Councillor Johnson.
Well, I think that they need to have a good level of English, especially for this, the idea of if they have an accident to call the emergency services. But I'd like to propose that we go down to the 46 and see how it goes, see how many pass, how many fail, and what the level is. If this gentleman is saying he can't recruit and these people have gone back, and it's, as Councillor Dilks said, we're going to be without taxi drivers. So I lean towards what the chairman says. She's on licensing. So I propose we go to 46, 47 and see how it goes. If it's too hard, it's too hard.
Councillor Dilks.
Yeah, I do support that as a perhaps a trial period, you know, to see what the experience is. So I'm happy to second that, Councillor Johnson. I'm just reminded, I'm a bit uncomfortable. I haven't sat the test. I don't know how many members of the licensing committee have. I hope some of them have actually looked at the test themselves and made a judgment. I mean, I've got to say, I am quite uncomfortable when we're being tested by a computer and, you know, the computer says no. I just remember when I worked for a previous employer and they gave me a car, I had to sort of, you know, for the safety that you had to go through a test on the computer. It was one of these tick box tests. And I always remember, I was advised before I went on the test that the tablecloth is blue. I thought, what? And one of the questions was, you went through an accident scenario on video, and the question at the end was, there was a family on the side of the road having a picnic. What colour was the tablecloth? I thought, what? And seriously, that was it. So I don't know about the quality of this test, and I question that. You know, have members of the committee actually had a look at the test, had a go themselves? You know, thank you.
Are we able to go for a trial period, or is this a complete policy change? Just so I know where we're going.
It will need to go to Cabinet for approval. It's a policy change. You could propose to Cabinet that this was for a temporary period.
Okay, so we do have a proposal here. I think we need to set a total figure of 47 rather than 46, because that does drop us down another level within the box. I just feel 47 is a bit more comfortable. So we have a proposer from Councillor Johnson and a seconder from Councillor Dilks. So can we take a vote on that, please?
Can we just reiterate what the proposal is? I propose then that we drop it to 47, which keeps us in the box, and we have a trial period for 6 months to see how it goes and see what the level is of the taxi drivers.
I support that, Madam Chairman.
Okay, can we take a vote on that if we're all clear? Those for? And those against? Thank you very much. Sorry, we also need to cover about the code of conduct within this section as well before we move on. So there was, from my understanding, no comments from the licensing committee about that. I have no comments. I'm quite happy how it reads. I'll just open it up to the floor for the other committee's members. Any comments? No, we're all happy. Do we need to vote on this? This is where I get confused, sorry. No comments, so we'll let that be. Thank you. Agenda item 7, review of the street trading policy. I'll hand over to Anne-Marie Coulthard again, who's going to present.
Thank you, yes. So this relates to the council's existing street trading policy, which was adopted on the 1st of January 2012. Policy provides the framework upon which the licensing authority delivers its functions in relation to street trading activities. Street trading is the selling or exposing or offering for sale any article, including a living thing, on any street. The review has been undertaken to ensure the policy reflects current guidance and continues to be fit for purpose while promoting improvements. The proposed changes to the street trading policy are highlighted in red in Appendix 2 of the policy document itself. The changes seek to make the policy more robust in terms of the application process and requirements, and to make it clear that mobile traders such as ice cream brands, mobile sandwich and hot food sellers who do not have specific customers to whom they visit on a round are required to hold a consent, and brings this in line with other types of street trading. The changes are more specifically detailed in Appendix 2 of the report. There is no legal duty placed on the council to consult on the street trading policy. However, it's good practice to consult, and subject to comments from the committee, it is intended that a 4-week public consultation will be undertaken commencing in January 2022. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from the committee? Can I just ask a question, Maria? I see we haven't updated this policy for 10 years. Is that normal practice, or do we have a time frame on these sort of policies?
It's a local choice policy. It's not a statutory policy, so there is no laid down timescale. There haven't been any significant changes, but at this point we really felt it was worth that being reviewed and brought before yourselves.
Lovely, thank you for clarifying that. Any comments? No, if we're all happy then that these changes go through, thank you. Agenda item 8, the street collection and house-to-house collection policy. Again, I'll hand over to Anne-Marie.
So this report presents a draft new policy covering street collections and house-to-house collections within the district. The authority currently follows the applicable legislation and issues permits for both street collections and house-to-house collections within the district, but to date has not had a policy providing a framework to support this. This report presents a new draft policy applicable to both of these areas. Street collections are the collecting of cash or articles for charitable purposes from a stationary position in the street. House-to-house collections involve collecting cash or goods for charity by going door to door. These collections can be undertaken by private companies, but the collection must be on behalf of a charity. The draft policy provides clarity for applicants, officers, and committee members when considering applications and decision-making. It also supports a consistent approach. The draft policy is at Appendix 3. The licensing committee reviewed the new draft policy at their meeting of 12 November and no adverse comments were made. There is no legal duty placed upon the council to consult on either the street trading policy or the street collection and house-to-house policy. However, it is good practice to consult, and subject to comments, it's intended a 4-week consultation will be undertaken starting in January.
Thank you for that. I've just got one question, if I may. It does say that we're allowed to refuse a permit and there's no real reason we have to give. Is that correct? I'm just trying to clarify that I've read it.
There are some instances that we can refuse. Now the policy seeks to make it clear what those instances are.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say I welcome this policy. If we've not had one before, I think it's quite an important document. So thank you. Any members got any comments? Councillor Westrap?
Thank you. Just a couple of questions, actually. Firstly, it's obviously a new policy. So why are we having a new policy now? I do think it's a good idea, but just why has it happened now? And what actual day-to-day effect will it have, potentially have, by bringing it in if it's just following what's statutory, if that makes sense? Just basically asking what effect it will have if we implement it.
So yes, we don't have to have a policy. We've followed regulations and legislation, but sometimes there are issues of interpretation, and the policy makes it clear in the circumstances where that any discretion may be applied or any particular conditions.
Thank you. Councillor Dilks?
It was just a question. Thank you, Madam Chairman. And it's just, I noticed at paragraph 1.3, it talks about house-to-house collections being a permit from the council to collect cash or goods. It's just sort of recognising the cashless society these days. I'm involved with the British Legion, and we go house to house, but it's amazing how people these days have less cash, and some people don't carry a lot of cash at all. So I'm just wondering if it should be changed to money, funds or finances, or whatever the correct word is, just to sort of update it perhaps. It's probably covered in the legislation, that's and I haven't actually gone through that to see you know, if the word cash is in there, but I'd just be advised. Thank you.
Councillor Dilks, could you just point to me where you are? Sorry, I was a bit lost on the document, sorry.
Well, Anne-Marie mentioned cash or goods, but also it's paragraph 1.3 under the background to the report.
Thank you, Councillor Dilks, sorry. Anne-Marie?
Yeah, the legislation we use goes back to 1939, hasn't been changed. So of course, those elements weren't around then, so it's not possible to amend that, I'm afraid.
Thank you for that. Any further comments? Are we all happy? Thank you very much. Agenda item 9, flooding update. Councillor Robert Reid, would you like to present?
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Just in introducing this, I perhaps should mention for clarity that I also am the Vice Chair of the Lincolnshire County Council Flood and Water Scrutiny Committee. Timely is today because I chaired the meeting yesterday. So in introducing this, the Lincolnshire County Council is designated as the lead local flood authority and has the responsibility for investigating flood incidents and enforcing circumstances. In emergency situations, under its civil contingency responsibilities, the council coordinates its efforts with the Lincolnshire County Council Emergency Planning Team to provide a proportionate response to flooding events. And it's timely and always noted to see that members of the public, parishes, town councils and whatever, all know that the particular number which is in the appendix. The council holds a supply of approximately 300 sandbags for emergency use, predominantly to support requests for emergency services. As Madam Chairman, we were in the grave need in Thirlby last December to call upon that service. There is nothing worse than being in a flooding situation, see water going into residents' homes and not being able to do anything about them. Sandbags can be some assistance in diverting and keeping floodwater out of the property during flooding events, but there are no benefit when the property is already flooded. Residents in areas of risk from flooding are urged to be proactive and take their own precautionary measures to protect their properties. And it's time at this moment, Chairman, to remind residents that currently the County Council has up to £5,000 per property in direct monies by way of grant for homeowners that are at risk for flooding. Sandbags may be provided to vulnerable residents in certain circumstances, as is in the report at para 1.8 and 1.9 of the report. However, there is no statutory duty on the council to provide sandbags. I, for one, am eternally grateful that it is an emergency service that we do, and we make effort within and provision within our general fund to actually provide this. Parish councils and town councils have been offered a supply of 100 sandbags and sand for them to deploy in their communities. 10 and one extra since we've written the report have actually responded. Today, very timely, I have written to remind all the others, that the service is available. But more importantly, also, is not just preventative maintenance, but many house and homeowners are not fully aware of riparian rights, the rights under the responsibilities of, as homeowners, they have to make sure that adequate drainage and water will pass from one side of their property to another. Separate arrangements are in place to support housing tenants under the council landlord's function, and a further 200 sandbags are held for this purpose. The parishes that have undertaken the offer is Hazelby and Loughton, Castlebytham, Sedgebrook, Westborough and Drydoddington, Gretford Parish Council, Colsterworth, North Witham, Great Ponton, Dowsby, Toftland and Manthorpe, and Billingborough. I'm sincerely hoping that this number will grow, and I can't stress the importance of having this facility, particularly with climate change and flash flooding. Thank you very much. I'll look forward to any questions and try and be helpful in answering them.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reid. Any questions? Councillor Westrap.
Thank you. I'm really glad to see this actually, because I look after a couple of villages that do flood in various places, and I'm really glad that Sedgebrook is one of those that's accepted the offer. Interestingly, one thing that has come up in a parish council in the past is that they've had sandbags, but they've perished. So that one question from my perspective is, how often do we offer new bags if they're having to store, if they've had to fill them and then put them into store and then they perish, for one? What do we do for villages that their parish councils haven't accepted the offer and yet they need to access sandbags? How do people get hold of them if they're not in the town? Yeah, those are the two questions. How do they access them and how often do we offer new bags?
Councillor Reid, would you like to answer?
Thank you, and thank you for the questions too. A very good question in the first one, because it allows me to expand one stage further. The council provides a ton of sand. It also provides the sandbags, so that, because what is not recommended is that each parish stores the sand already in the bags, because the bags rot. So that way they have 100 bags and they have the sand. And one of the biggest concerns, of course, is where to actually store the sand, but that's the purpose of what happens there. To answer the second question, where parishes have not uptaken this, of course, as it is in Appendix 1, there is the protocol of how parishes go about it. And of course, Lincolnshire County Council has a flood line, which any resident can call. I'm currently involved in a practice that when a flood happens, then the count from the last experience I had, that the lead authority, being the county council, has a more joined up response between their emergency services and their emergency department, and indeed those here, and above all with Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue, because the first thing that most residents do, I mean, take Elsie Park when it was flooding, the Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue must have had, I don't know, 200 calls, all asking the same question. Now, I was there and felt pretty helpless with the amount of help that I could give. The first help came from the district council. It's not statutory to do their duty, but they had got sandbags and sand coming while we were watching water going into garages. And at that point, fortunately, it hadn't gone into anybody's house. But it's a time of the response and how we act coordinatedly in actually looking after these situations. The whole situation that started at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, really, we didn't get to grips with till about 8 o'clock at night, when the main pumps had come from Gainsborough to actually pump out and move the water. So we're working at response times. Now, the county council had just engaged and bought two extra. So they've now got 4 high-powered, high-capacity pumping apparatus pumps that are towed by 4x4 responses. Our nearest one is Gainsborough, and yesterday I lobbied and urged other members to see if we can manage to find the funds for a further 2, because particularly in the south of the district, and Councillor Baxter was there yesterday and he supported me in that ploy that we need 2 extra, 1 in the south and 1 particular in the north. So I know I've elaborated, but I think from first-hand experience and what we are here to do for our members of the electorate is to do our best to look after them, and the flooding coordination I've been working at all year. What is really nice is that, well, not really nice, I think it's really dutiful, is the appendix that is in your report that is here. We're sending out to parishes as well as a further awareness, and the particular telephone numbers to actually call. And it's not just the telephone numbers that they call, it's a response that they can give. And that's very, very important. And after the experience last December, I'd like to think, because we haven't experienced it, but I really hope it's the case, that as a lead authority, the County Council have really upped their game in actually providing flood defence. And, you know, as I mentioned in the report, it's also prevention of some of this and riparian rights. You know, it is a big awareness campaign that we have to sort of continue to remind landowners their duties, particularly sometimes farmers with big fields that don't have ditches that aren't cleared out, that then run down roads, and we all know the horror stories. And of course, it's a bit like snow tyres and snow chains. You don't actually need them until it's snowing, and suddenly it's there and then, and it's just the same with flooding. I could talk all day, and you could probably work out I'm quite passionate about it. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor Dilks.
I welcome Councillor Reid's passion for the issue, and certainly welcome the initiatives. You know, last December was a wake-up call. It was in my area. You know, people had to be, sandbags were used. I'm sorry that my parish, Deep in St James, is not on the list yet, but I will go back and nudge them and get them to accept the 100 sandbags and the sand that comes. Of course, that's only a sticking plaster, really. It's a, you know, that only just gets you started on the problem. If you've got a flooding problem, 100 sandbags is not very many. There's 2 other problems, and I speak from some little experience, having been a former TA soldier for 20 years, and the only time I was ever called up in the service of my country was to help people in Peterborough who'd facing a flood, basically, where there were some really luxury houses on Thorpe Road, opposite the hospital there, where some idiot had allowed them to be built on a floodplain, and when the river burst its banks, they were all saying, "Ooh, didn't think that'd happen," but it did. The experience there was, and I'm really pleased that you picked up, Councillor Reid, on the it's no good putting the sand in the bags and storing it somewhere, and that in itself presents a problem, because filling the bags is a real time-consuming issue. And what we started sort of filling them, you know, as you'd expect, but within a couple of hours, a couple of the innovative soldiers had been and found a couple of pallets, 3 pallets, formed a U with the pallets, and then had purloined a couple of traffic cones, which were turned upside down and the tops turned off, and you could then shovel it in pretty quickly, and somebody holds the bag underneath. I say that because what I'm saying is, perhaps when we issue these sandbags, it almost needs a leaflet to go with it as a guidance to, just because you got the bags and the sand, that's a step, one step, but you need to know a bit more about what you're doing. And actually within that leaflet, I would suggest that it would actually include how to lay sandbags, because you can't just chuck them down. They really have to be, put in with some degree of little skill, if I can put it that way. It is a big issue. I'm sorry, I could talk a bit longer as well, but I won't. I really support it. And as I say, I'll go back to mine, and we should really be nudging all the other parishes to say, well, why not? You need this, as I think it was Councillor Reid said, particularly with climate change, flooding ain't going to get any rarer, is it? Thank you.
Councillor Reid, can I just ask, oh, sorry, did you want to come back?
Yeah, just very briefly to say that as a district function, the portfolio for flooding has changed and has come to me, which would be timely with the County Council. But I have been working with Phil Swinton. What we've been working on doing over the last 6 weeks is actually putting a presentation together that we're going out to parishes where we can get invited. I know Bourne's coming up very soon. And I think there is probably the key place to actually mention, and you're absolutely right, and thank you for the help, of filling the sandbags cone upside down. I didn't actually know that. I have been with communities. I mean, last year, Chairman, I am very grateful to Tesco's for all of their heavy duty carrier bags, because that's what we used as sandbags at that point. We were desperate. We're a long way on from then, and it was an absolute nightmare and horrid to see. So we're a long way there. So to advise in filling them, how to lay them, and further, we can't be too aware in today's climate. Thank you. You want to come back to me?
I'll just let Councillor Dukes respond.
One final thing, and it is on that, Councillor Reid, and I know you'll be aware of it. The other crucial thing is the correct sand, the correct type of sand. Ordinary soft sand seeps through the sandbags straight away once it's washed out. And I think it's sharp sand, isn't it, that's required?
I couldn't remember if it was sharp or coarse.
No,
but,
it has to be a specific, ordinary sand, or you can get the wrong kind of sand, if I can say that, and we need to tell parishes that. Thank you.
I'd just like to kind of say, it's kind of a statement and a question, really. To say thank you for the report. The question is, are the partnerships working really well? I get the impression they are, that Lincolnshire County Council's very engaged with us and kind of on a national way as well, because it always just worries me that the national kind of takes the lead rather than the local. So I just wondered where we kind of sat within all that. Thank you.
In my usual character of being open, honest and transparent, I would say last December, the response certainly wasn't good enough. I would say that we have gone a long way from that. And I'd like to use this opportunity of thanking the Chief Executive in particular for really being sharp on the metal. She challenged this straightforward with the Chief Executive of the County Council, Leslie Barnes, and helped with the moving forward. It has timely made extra budgets. There was an extra £200,000 given for this nature that we're discussing now, and there was an extra £2 million given for our flood issues across the county. One of which was a highways issue where the 6121 and the 151 just outside Bourne, we'd had a flooding issue there and the culvert had collapsed for many years. There's been many improvements across our district and indeed across the whole county from that £2 million. So it has been proactive with response, materials, the way we work together. And we just need to get a couple more of these extra pumps next. That's next on my list to lobby for, if we possibly can, but that's not going to be an easy task. That's going to take quite a challenge, but we'll have a crack at it. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you for that. Any other comments? No, that's great. Again, thank you for presenting that report, Councillor Reid. It was very good. Thank you. Sorry, just before we move on, Councillor Johnson's just got a quick question.
This support that you're talking about, councillor Reid, is it just for council properties or any property, private properties as well?
It is segregated into two because the HRA has its budget for its council functions, but it is most prevalent and upfront for all properties, private as well. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you, councillor. We'll move on to agenda item 10, the corporate plan performance update and review outcomes. Is it Ben presenting? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'll be, normally it's Ken Lyne who comes to speak to you. I'll be delivering it today on behalf of Councillor Cook, who has performance under his portfolio. We last came and spoke to you on the 8th of June. We brought the year end for 2020-2021 corporate plan actions performance report. At that session, we outlined the kind of future plans for performance reporting, which will be 2 sessions. Here we have a mid-year update, which covers Q1, Q2, and then a year end, which is the full Q1, 2, 3, and 4 period. This is the mid-year update, and then I think we'll be coming back in a similar time next kind of June at year end. And also in that last session, we outlined the commitment to, at the anniversary of the corporate plan, which has just recently passed, that we'd be reviewing all of the actions that were within that document and the key performance indicators that we use to track progress against it. So Appendix 1, probably the key part of this report. This outlines the Q1, Q2 mid-year performance for 6 of the 8 actions that this committee has oversight of. The 2 that aren't in there, they're not hidden away, it's just they don't suit a mid-year report. So the carbon footprint is an annual measure, and similarly the parks and the green flag status, which we'll report at year end. Generally speaking, positive performance so far this year. Of those 6 actions, 4 of them are green, they're on track, they're on target or exceeding. There are, however, 2 points to note in there. The first one will be on page 194 of your pack, which is in relation to the big clean. This is something we've included in the commentary. The reprioritisation of staff around the pandemic has meant that monitoring of delivery of that service hasn't been able to proceed. As such, it's greyed out in the summary as we don't have data available, and is referenced again in the review document that we look to kind of reframe that more in line with what we can actually deliver. The other is on page 196, which is covering environment SK and our relationship with that. It is currently listed as amber, which is kind of not quite on target, area to be aware of, but not as pressing as red ranked items. There's I think an acceptance that the indicators which are in there aren't necessarily of the highest quality. And again, we bring that up again in the review document. But hopefully the commentary in there does outline that the service as a whole, the council has found satisfactory, but it's listed as amber because we're not convinced by the measures that are in there. So we'll come back to that later in questions if you like, but moving just quickly on to the review. Let's say the idea was, having had a year of measuring these actions and indicators, we've built up a lot of knowledge from where we were at the start of the process. So we take the anniversary of the corporate plan as an opportunity to check that those actions are still relevant, still the right actions that we as a council are taking, and also that the measures underneath them are fit for purpose to allow both this scrutiny committee and the other scrutiny committees the opportunity to effectively scrutinise those actions and the council's performance against them. For the 8 actions for this committee, relatively light changes. 4 of the actions have seen no change at all. Actually, that's technically not true. We have tried to tighten up elements of them, which just means aligning the actions with the correct cabinet members, the correct directors, and the correct reporting periods. But that's a neatening rather than a change. So 4 of them haven't had any substantial changes, and there are 4 others which are suggested to be revised to different degrees. On page 203 of your pack, we again come back to referencing that big clean action, and the suggestion there is to move from, it's the proportion of all streets in the district was the original. The proposal is to move to actually monitoring the direct actions of that big clean team. And so we're going to, with your approval, of course, take the upcoming year to kind of baseline what activity that team is doing, and then set some targets from there as to what we kind of want them to cover. Page 204, there is a slight amendment to commercial waste performance indicator. Currently, the focus is on the total income that brings. However, this is it's a year-end measure. It's not particularly informative. The suggestion is to move to looking at customer numbers and growth of customer numbers. Page 206, again, reference environment SK. This one doesn't include a final suggested indicator. And it's because currently the specification is being reviewed. Gary, is that accurate? The specification is being reviewed currently, and so the suggestion is to change the indicators underneath that action to fit more in line with what comes out of the specification. I think it's likely that we'll have to come back to you possibly in the March session just for confirmation, because the specification won't be completed until December, I think is the plan. Thank you. And then finally, page 208 suggests an amendment to how we monitor electric vehicle charging points. In the original version of the plan, the corporate plan actions, the indicator there was what are we planning to do and how many are we actually installing in the district. We have installed some in the district now, and I think as part of the strategy around that, it's now about monitoring demand. So the change here is to look actually what are those charging points doing? How much are they being used? How many miles are they generating? How much carbon are they saving for the district as a whole? Appendix 3, after that, is some supporting information. I should at this point clarify, we don't control every element of the data within Appendix 1, sorry. Waste in particular, Appendix 1 has it has a waste action that covers the waste tonnages and volumes, percentage of recycling and the like. That data is delayed slightly because the county council hold a lot of the control over there. So what we have done, where everything else is reported up to Q2, that one is only reported up to Q1, but we've included Appendix 3 in there to give you hopefully a lot more supporting information around that. The committee has seen that appendix before, or a version of it, but it's just bringing that data up to date as much as possible. We really appreciate, particularly on the suggested revisions, really appreciate your feedback. Anything that's missing on there or any changes that you don't feel are right. But yes, I think Gary and Anne-Marie are hopefully able to support me in answering any questions you might have around that.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Westrop.
Thank you. I've got one quick question. And that is on page 206, which is the proposed changes to the reporting on number 5. I completely and utterly understand the change to the client side reporting criteria. It'd be great to see some client listening in there, something like an NPS or Trustpilot numbers. That would be brilliant. What I don't understand, and I'd really like to know, is why we've taken the commercial bit out of there. So why have we taken the numbers out of it? Because it's essentially a high-performing and commercially successful company, and surely without following the numbers, we don't know whether it's commercially successful.
Who would like to answer? Councillor Reid?
Thank you, Chairman. It's a timely point that I should also mention that I am now the current chairman of ESK. It is believed, and I have taken legal advice from the Assistant Chief Executive, that I do not have a conflict of interest. And so therefore, and this would have come up at full council, I think, but it didn't owing to the running out of time. I won't take too much of the time up today, but that position has been made clear. I fully agree with the question. I wish and intend to see that ESK and that information is timely, that it's conducted, that it's open, and that it's transparent, and that it will support the corporate plan. That is my statement. It is my intention of what is dutiful to deliver. And I will now hand over to Gary Smith, who actually manages the council's relationship with this company. Thank you.
Gary?
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks, Councillor Reid. Yeah, the emphasis on the action is around the financial sustainability point. The point of Environment SK was always about delivering the council's grounds maintenance service at a value for money, and one that we had flexibility over and could work in a very close partnership with. There was in the first year, well, in for the year that there was a target there, a financial contribution element to it, but from the grounds maintenance perspective, that's not proceeded in future years, because the emphasis and focus is on good quality service and value for money of that service, rather than driving profits to return back. That is part of the wider company ethos, but that's for the company there and the company's committee to oversee as the shareholder function. And this is more about the service delivery side of things. So that was the reason it was being taken out, the focus on the financial sustainability and the quality of the service, the value for money side. Thank you.
Any other questions regarding Councillor Wheeler?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've just got a couple, and apologies if I'm asking them at the wrong time because I'm new to the committee. On page 197, it was about increasing recycling, and also the issue of minimising fly tipping is a particular problem for residents in Stamford, as I think, actually Deepings might have a similar problem, but we live a considerable distance from any recycling centre. And we lost our weekly collection service, which SKDC and LCC were combining to offer us on a Saturday. That went in the first lockdown, and it's not being restored. So I'm just, one question there is what are we doing to encourage recycling in places like Stamford that struggle to get to recycling centres? And then my second one, I declare a personal interest. It's on EV charging points on page 198. Because 3 days ago I bought my first EV, and I'm now living proof that we need more charging points. So are there any plans to install more points? Again, this is particularly relevant to people who live in Stamford, because Stamford has a particular challenge with town centre residents not having their own parking spaces and not able to install home chargers. So are we expanding the offer across the district? Thank you.
Gary?
Thank you, Councillor Mantfield and Councillor Wheeler. In regards to the first question around recycling, as you say, that the service that LCC funded and that the District Council delivered was stopped during the pandemic. Since then, the County Council have undertaken a review, and they have confirmed that that service will not be returning. It is something that we as a district council have made representations to the county council on, but unfortunately that's their position and it is within their policy. I know that they've recently reviewed that and they keep that under review, and we continue to liaise closely with them. In terms of broader recycling, obviously there's the domestic collections that people can use for recycling. There is also bulky waste collections that people can draw from. We obviously more generally as part of the Lincolnshire Waste Partnership work with our partner councils to encourage recycling and messages out there, and there are lots of other ways, for instance charity shops and other bring banks that are around in the area for people to use. But it is an issue and it's one that we all need to continue to work on. In terms of your electric vehicle charging points, congratulations on your new car. I hope you enjoyed that. At the moment, there is no direct plans for any new installations, as in we haven't got any in motion to be installed, but it is something that we keep under very close review. At the moment, the vehicle charging points that have been installed in each of our 4 towns, their usage on those points is actually very relatively low, essentially. Something that we monitor very closely, that demand level. Obviously, that is one indication, appreciate it's only one, but one indication as to the level of increased demand. The key thing for us is about the availability of grants from the government in order to support and fund that. And that is the other aspect of which that we continue to keep abreast of so that we can take advantage of those. So where those grant opportunities come up, then we would be looking to see where it was possible for further installations. So there's no direct plan at the minute for any specific locations, but it is something that we would expect to happen over the next few years, 5-10 years. But I think Councillor Reid would also like to add to my comments. Thank you.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the questions, Councillor Wheeler. You'll probably be quite interested in my answers. The recycling amenity provision for Stamford, of course, currently is at Bourne. That is your nearest facility. I happen to be invited, since it's my county council division, to a meeting on Friday that was with the portfolio holder from Lincolnshire, Dan McNally, and indeed the MP Gareth Davis was there, and he brought with him one of his agents, which was Councillor Callum Cook. And much to my surprise, we had a surprise visit and inclusion of our county council leader, Martin Hill. And the situation of facility and provision for Stamford did come up. The concern was highlighted, in all fairness, by Councillor Cook, and there is an awareness of the situation. I can't allude to an outcome because it was Friday and there wasn't an outcome, but I can assure you that the registration of this issue was prevalent and it was actually there. I hope that is not necessarily reassuring, but it is a point of information for you. Moving on to the charging points, climate change, yes. My predecessor, Dr. Peter Mosley, it should be noted the provision that he's managed as a district to get the provision across the 4 towns. I have every intention of recognising the technology, the climate change and the need that's going to escalate for this provision. And I have every intention of moving the programme forward. I think probably to actually increase the number in each town rather than to outsource to points at other locations, because in actual fact, what people do with their cars is they actually travel to towns, and that's, you know, they are the main functionality. So I really think it's that facility that we looked probably to quantify first, and then, I would think probably another term of office when the needs grow even greater. Of course, car owners will be making their own provision and their own facility at home, but we will need other destination points as well. So nice to debate it, and that's my take. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Dilks.
Thank you. I think Councillor Wheeler raises a good point about Stamford. I've got to say, it's been a matter of controversy and debate for the past 20 years that Stamford hasn't got a recycling centre. So I'm glad it's finally registered with, whether it's the MP or the county council or whoever else, and I hope they get on and actually provide one. Frankly, saying yours is in Bourne, it isn't really good enough. There has been, you know, promises, and I think it came close at one stage some years ago, that there was going to be one provided, and it just sort of petered out and never happened. As Councillor Wheeler says, we've got a particular problem now in the Deepings. Ours is also in Bourne, about 10 miles away, I guess. I've used it a couple of times recently. I've had to use it because we had a private recycler in my parish in Deeping St James, Prentice Brothers, and it was a fantastic facility, I've got to say. He was a proper recycler. If you took him a washing machine, he would take it to pieces, and every little piece went in a different bin and was eventually sent off for recycling. It didn't get just chucked into landfill. It was a proper recycling. I actually remember when I first got on the county council, I managed to get, when we had committees in those days, you know, not the system we've got now, that I managed to get him, they were going to close him down, Environment Agency were going to close him down because he didn't have hard standing, and they were worried that petrol and things might seep into the ground. I managed to get him a grant of, I think it was £20,000, that he could tarmac his area. Unfortunately, though, he's closed recently, I think partly in fairness because of his health, but also he said because he was getting abuse from members of the public, because he was actually having to charge people. You know, if you took a television or a fridge, he'd want £5, £10 or £15, whatever it was. But it was a really convenient service. But what I'm saying is that that service we used as a parish council. We used to put, I think it was monthly on a Saturday. We paid for a skip that anybody could come and put things in for free if they lived in the parish. And that was a replacement for 10 or 20 years ago, when I can't remember, Councillor Reid, I'm sure will help me out, whether it was the county provision or the district would have a couple of wet waste lorries would come, and people could come on a Saturday and throw their stuff into them. That service is gone, and so we tried to replace it. But what I'm saying is, it just brings to the fore the need for another waste recycling centre, whether it's the district or the county, and hopefully working together we'll get that. So I really welcome that initiative that he's told us about. Thank you, Councillor Reid. Just on the electric points, I just think that's something that we should be putting on our work programme, and I'll be happy to do that when it comes to that point in the agenda. I just had a recent experience of them, and I won't mention it now, but I just think it is something that we should look at. Some councils in the country, I have a friend in Leeds who's got an electric vehicle, and he's telling me that, you know, he gets free electric charges for his car within the Leeds area that the city council funds to encourage people to buy them. It's a limited time thing. I'm not saying we could offer that, but perhaps we could offer a bit more than we do already. I don't know how much we charge on these chargers, and that was part of the recent issue that I had with somebody who had a car and went round and realised all these public chargers charge different amounts and are of different use, if I could put it that way. So I don't know if that influences why ours are not being used to their fullest at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doakes. Can I just kind of draw it back? They were all really good points. I just want to kind of draw it back to the kind of agenda item of, are we happy that the changes that are in front of us, that we're going to take them as a group change and the reasons why the changes are being made? Can I kind of make that proposal?
I'll second that, Nikki.
Can we just have a quick vote on that? Are we all happy that that goes through? Lovely, thank you. Thank you for bringing the report, Ben, thank you. Agenda item 11, just a verbal update please on the tree planting even, that we kind of discussed at last committee. Gary, I'm looking at you, sorry.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Manterfield. The reason it was put down as a verbal item is to facilitate the update to be a speedy one. So we, at the last committee meeting, you discussed this and you allocated your climate reserve funding for tree planting. We had committed as part of the report and proposal that had come forward that we would conduct some consultation with the SKDC ward councillors and copy to the parish town council clerks. We were delayed from being able to start that because of the pre-election period, so we had to wait for that to happen obviously before we could launch that. That then did launch on the 1st of November, ran for 2.5 weeks, the 17th of November. We had basically, broadly speaking, positive responses back. There were a few queries about the types of trees and the impact on pets and animals, but also in the number of trees in a couple of the locations and the formation of those. But following that, we've made a few tweaks to 2 of the areas, but otherwise they've now essentially, they were all supported, and so we are now proceeding. And in fact, this week, linked to it being National Tree Week, there is tree planting going on, and the relevant ward councillors have been notified and invited to join that. Just to remind the committee in terms of the 4 areas, because I suspect that will be a question if I don't then mention it. Yeah, it was in each of the 4 towns. So it's going to be Hillfoot in Grantham, Foxglove Drive in Stamford, Rochester Crescent in Bourne, and Tattershall Drive in Deepins. So those are the 4 areas, and we're now proceeding with those plans. So hopefully a positive update to the committee on that. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much, Gary. Councillor Reid, did you want to come in at this point?
Just simply, I was going to remind the directorate and indeed inform members that that programme was happening today, this week. I understand that Grantham is being looked after by the ward councillors, and I think leaders going there, as you'd expect him to go to Stamford. I shall be at Bourne, I think 12 o'clock tomorrow, and I'm sure Market Deeping has its representatives too.
Gary, just a quick question on the trees. We did kind of budget that we probably would only be able to provide in the 3 areas. Are we going ahead with 3, or are we going ahead with the 4 that were proposed?
Yes, sorry, I should have mentioned that we adjusted very slightly the proposals to enable, if there was positive support, for all 4 of them to go ahead, to be within the budget to avoid that scenario. In actual fact, some of the feedback that we had meant we have changed some of the tree numbers in one of the areas, I should say, in any case. So in answer to your question, it's within the budget. So that's okay. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you for that. That's really positive. Thank you. Any other comments from the committee? No, lovely. Right, we'll move on. Agenda item, I'm confused, 12. Update on climate change. Is it Serena? Serena Brown, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to bring this as again a brief update to the committee since the last meeting. So last meeting considered quite a few climate change items, including an annual carbon footprint statement and the annual climate change statement, so the sort of 7-page short report as well. And as Gary's just updated the committee around our plans around tree planting, which has been a particular focus since that last meeting in September as well. As a brief update, a climate action group meeting, which functions as a member officer group, that was held on the 19th of November. And since the last group, it was agreed to update the terms of reference of that group to confirm that the group is now a permanent member officer group, to reconfirm the membership of that, and the group is to meet twice a year and to consider a range of items relating to climate change, particularly regarding the council's approach to its own operational carbon footprint, as well as reiterating that the remit of that committee is to, remit of that group, is to consider various technological advancements that might impact on our work for our own operations, as well as more widely in the district. And then finally, a conversation around the engagement around what we can do throughout the wider district around climate change and the impact that we can meaningfully have as SKDC. So it was a very useful discussion in the meeting. We had sort of a more of a discussion around engagement with local businesses around climate change and other groups and how those can be brought into the discussion, particularly considering the initial remit of that climate change group was to establish the council's carbon footprint and to track that needed 30% reduction. So that work is sort of in train now, and it's felt that we should be going further and faster with that engagement around community groups and local businesses. So the group is to take that forward alongside greater promotion of that Climate Matters statement, the 7-page short report that I mentioned, as part of our wider climate change engagement work. So I'm happy to take any questions on that or any climate change questions that the committee has. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Serena. Any comments or questions from the committee? No, I think we're happy. Thank you ever so much. Agenda item 13, water refill stations. Councillor Reid, I understand you're presenting.
Thank you, Chairman. First time I've attended your committee meetings. I seem to be putting on quite a show today as well, and it's good to be here. Okay, fine. So the water refill station, something close to my heart, along with many other councillors, and the facilities for our residents. The request to include on the agenda an item on water refill stations was requested by Councillor Baxter. The report outlines the potential benefits publicly accessible drinking fountains could offer, including reduced waste from members of the public reusing bottles. This consideration for any new facilities should be made alongside the financial and maintenance implications. A national scheme, I'm sure many are aware of, to provide water and reduce single use of plastics. The committee is asked to consider the options and provide direction on any next steps. So I listen and look forward to contributions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to say I welcome what Serena's just said about going beyond our own council activities to encourage wider engagement on climate issues. And I think that this is a perfect example of that. As Councillor Reid has said, you know, there is a national incentive to provide water for people so that they can stop using single-use plastic bottles. So if you don't mind, I've just prepared a few words on this. It used to be that shops gave out free single-use plastic bags. Do you remember those days with every purchase? Well, those days are all gone, and we now all walk with our own bags to avoid the unnecessary purchase of a 10p plastic bag. We used to see discarded plastic bags flapping in the wind all over the place. Remember those days? they're gone, and that's progress. And so in the spirit of progress, we need to tackle the next biggest problem, which is single-use plastic bottles. Just to give you some facts here, 7.7 billion plastic bottles are bought across the UK every year. That's about 150 for each person in the UK. They are bought cheaply and disposed of carelessly. A plastic water bottle may cost as little as 50 pence to buy, but the environmental cost is so much more. It takes 3 times the amount of water in a water bottle to make the bottle itself. It takes 1/4 of the bottle in oil to fill, transport, cool, and dispose of each bottle. And alarmingly, a single-use plastic water bottle takes 400 years to break down. And they're not recycled. 91% of the plastic from water bottles is not recycled, ends up in our oceans, polluting our waters and disrupting our ecosystems. It's estimated that by 2050, the oceans will contain more plastic than fish. So as a result, plastic water bottles are being banned across the world. So it's already been banned in towns and cities in places in Australia, in America, in India. Kenya has banned plastic water bottles on their beaches and national parks. So we need to be looking at an alternative, which is why I think we should be adopting water refill stations. Councillor Reid alluded to the refill website, which basically is a programme that was started in Bristol, and it shows where you can refill your water bottle. And if you look at it, you will see countless councils across the UK installing water refill stations in their towns and cities. Every week, the BBC carries a news story showing a refill station being installed and celebrating the steps being taken towards reducing waste and single-use plastic. In Bristol, where the refill project started, as well as towns, as well as shops and cafes, they now have 10 water refill stations where people can get water on the street. In Leeds, the University of Leeds became the first university to completely ban plastic bottles over 10 years ago, and it has subsequently installed over 200 water refill stations across its campus. So I really think this is an important step for us to take as a district, offering free water to our residents and visitors 24 hours a day, 7 days a week from our very own town centres. And like Serena said, we'll be encouraging our community to make a difference with just a small change, just as we all did in the last decade with eliminating unnecessary plastic bags. And why should we do this? Well, as we all know, SKDC declared a climate emergency over 2 years ago. And part of that declaration recognised that whilst we have an important role to play to reduce our own carbon footprint, it's important to acknowledge the vast majority of carbon emissions from South Kesteven are generated by residents, businesses, other public sector organisations and visitors. So we also have a responsibility to provide community leadership and to create a real movement for change. And one way we can do that is by installing these water refill stations. So today, please, can we do something positive for the people of SKDC, for our residents and visitors, for the future of our town centres and for the future of our planet. So I would like to propose option 3.4, which is that the council consider developing a proposal for a public drinking fountain in the town centres of each of the 4 towns in the district. So that's what I'd like to propose. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Dilks?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was wondering if Councillor Wheeler was going to actually make a proposal, and I'm glad that she did at the end, and I would be very happy to second it. It's just a no-brainer, I've got to say. And you know, when I went to school, you were not allowed to have a drink in the classroom, and now, you know, I know my grandkids take a recycled water bottle, you know, every day to them, and they're encouraged to do that. So that's a really good thing, you know. So, you know, that generation of kids is learning about, you know, but the trouble is, it's people like us are still using these single-use bottles. I remember, yeah, they're well done. I think I'll shut up again. When I went on the, it's interesting that you've got those, Nikki, because, and Amanda, but in 2001, I first went on the county council, and they had a members' room, and there were stacks and stacks of very small bottles of water, plastic bottles of water, and you'd sort of get one, and everybody sort of had a plastic, and they were all thrown away. And it took about 5 years for us to encourage the county to do away, that you didn't need those. Let's just have a water fountain like we've got over there, and so those are the ways. So I really welcome anything that we can do. We've, as Councillor Wheeler said, we started on looking at our own generation of carbon and how we can reduce it within the council, and we've made some really good progress on that. And I just think now, as Serena has said, the climate change officer has said, now's this time when we're starting to break out into actually educating our ratepayers that they are the ones actually that are causing the real problem. The council's contribution to carbon emissions is infinitesimal. It's small compared to the overall South Kesteven, how many millions of tons we chuck into the atmosphere between us. So these water fountains are a real sort of way forward, and they're also a talking point, I think, that would get people thinking, oh, right, that's a good idea, isn't it? Obviously there's the budget to consider. So it is subject to budget, but it is also, I would want to know how they're going to be made. I wouldn't say vandal proof, but how they're going to be made robustly, if I can put it that, because I know some areas have had problems with, with fountains being vandalised. I actually looked up on the web last night, and I saw that one town, I can't remember which town it was, had got I think it was an old Victorian water fountain, and because of the way that traffic is, it's actually now in the middle of the road, and it's on a roundabout. And no wonder the council decided not to sort of upgrade and renew that one. But I'm sure that, and I really welcome the fact that we're, not just sort of saying, oh, let's have in paragraph 3.3, let's have a trial possibly in one town of the district. Let's do it in all 4 towns, perhaps with different ways of doing it, and I'm sure it would be a real step forward. Thank you.
Councillor Reid?
By which I welcome the proposal and what is being put forward. We're going to need to take consultation with the town councils for the sort of most sensible location to be able to follow this through. Thank you.
Councillor Westrap?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a bit torn, and I'm not torn because I think it's a bad idea at all. I actually do think it's a good idea, but don't think installing a water fountain in each town centre alone is going to have the desired effect. And I think it probably needs to be a combination of 3.2 and 3.4 to educate people where they can get water if they can't get to the fountains and things, because just putting one in the town, I mean, I have to be honest, I wouldn't think, well, I can go into a shop and ask for water. It just wouldn't even cross my mind. So I think there needs to be some education around and encouraging businesses to support it as well. So it's not just one measure. I do think it's a good idea to put them in, but I just think it needs to be a bit broader than just doing it.
Councillor Wheeler, did you indicate to come back?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You're absolutely right. It is about education. On the Stamford Town Council, I've just done a letter as well to all the shops and supermarkets in Stamford to try and encourage them to stop selling single-use plastic bottles. But the refill app that I've mentioned, it actually shows you which shops you can go into in order to get your bottle refilled. And it also, I think there are stickers as well that can go on those shops, but it is about education. And I think starting with those water refill stations prominently in our towns will help spear that and drive that forward. Regards to what Councillor Dilk said about vandalising and making them vandal proof, I did a lot of research into what would be suitable, and there is a company, it's MIW, and they're already doing a lot of work with councils, and they have got as a vandal proof a water fountain as you can have. You can't tamper with any of the items on it. Lots of things are hidden from view, so you can't attack the spout or anything like that. The only thing you can do to it, I think, is actually physically, smash it off the off its stand, but I think that takes quite considerable force. I think that would be that would require more than just a drunken gang of an evening. And in terms of maintenance cost, it would be in water £40 a year, and then in 6 monthly services at about £100 a year. So you're looking at an annual cost of maintaining them for about £250 a year. Thank you.
I'd just like to kind of make a comment. I think it's a great idea. I really do. I think it is, like Councillor Westrop says, it's about education as well. I mean, there's a big drive a few years ago about stop using every time coffee cups. But I've also had, and coffee stains, not that I'm a big coffee drinker, but I've also known people be refused to get it refilled because of the way their coffee cup looks, which just makes me laugh a little bit. And they had to then be charged the extra 5p to get a kind of a temporary one. So, sorry, that was a bit of a side note. I think this is a really good idea. Yes, schools do encourage recycling, and reusing. My daughter has to go with a bottle every day that they will reuse. And I would like to kind of second Amanda's proposal, really, if we can kind of amend it to add the education, just that we look at it. I don't want us to get into the situation that we're all for it, but then the costs just are so expensive because it is the maintenance, the cleaning, who's going to take the responsibility of it? Yes, I'd love to kind of really support this. I think it's a great idea, but I do agree with Councillor Westrop that we kind of amend the proposal if we may. So I'll just pass it back to you, Councillor Wheeler, as you proposed. Can I just go to Councillor Johnson first, please?
Amanda, just one question. You mentioned all those countries that have banned plastic bottles. Why haven't we?
It's not the countries that have banned the plastic bottles, it's individual towns within those countries. And yeah, why haven't we? We absolutely should. If we look to the future, I'm sure, like plastic bags, in 10 years' time, we will not be having all these plastic bottles. So let's get ahead of it and do it in the district. Are you asking me to amend the proposal?
If you can, we can vote on yours, and then we can.
No, I'm more than happy.
This is where my rules of constitution gets a bit blurry, but I can make a second amendment, but I lose track of where we vote.
No, I'm happy to amend. I'm happy to amend it. I'm just trying to find the page where it was on, because I've what was it, 217? Thank you. So it was proposal 3.4. So for the council to develop a proposal for a public drinking fountain in the town centres of each of the 4 towns in the district, subject to budget, and embark on an education plan or a publicity campaign to support eliminating single-use plastics and refilling water bottles. Yeah, well, maybe to support the refill agenda, because it's actually you can use the word refill, but also capital R refill is the national scheme. Sorry, I've just whittled on something around there, maybe.
That's fine. Are any of us clear?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I actually seconded Councillor Wheeler's, but I'm very happy for the seconding to come from the chair.
No, you're very welcome to, Councillor Dilks. Thank you for that. So Amanda's proposing the before. Amy, have we got that? Yes. And could you read it back to us, please?
So we've got, the council could consider developing a proposal for a public drinking fountain in the town centres of each of the four towns in the district, subject to budget, and embark on publicity campaign to support the refill agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we all happy? Are we happy with that, Councillor Wheeler?
Ecstatic, thank you.
Councillor Dilks, are you happy to second that? Can we vote, please? Thank you very much, everyone. Well,
can I just say one thing? Amanda, you sent that letter. You said about the letter. Maybe that could be the starting point for letting everybody know how important it is. and let them know, because you've done the groundwork. So if you could pass that on to somebody, it would save perhaps a lot of work for somebody. And well done, Amanda, you got there in the end.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, Gloria's talking about a letter that actually it's in front of the town council tonight, but after that I'll send it to SK.
Lovely, thank you for that, Councillor Wheeler, thank you. Agenda item 14, the green.
Chairman, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Gary.
Would you mind just if I come in on the back of the refill item? Yeah,
of course.
Thank you for the steer from the committee. That's helpful. Just to clarify, as is noted in the report, clearly this is subject to budget, and of course, because it came up at relatively late, there wasn't the chance in advance to work up any costings or to look at the practicalities and the details of how this worked. I mean, not least as Councillor Reid has mentioned, is that we'd also want to consult and engage with the relevant town council. So I'm just highlighting, we will now take that away as officers to develop up those proposals. I just wanted to get clarity from you as a committee, whether you would want to see that come back here, or whether we would instead take that.
Gary, could we bring that back for the March meeting? Because I know we've got a terrible gap now between our committees. So I think March would be great to add that onto the work plan and see what the costings actually are, and then we can discuss again. That'd be great. Thank you.
That's absolutely fine. Thank you for that clarity.
Sorry about it, Gary. I'm rushing ahead again. Right, if we're all happy. Agenda item 14, the green flag status of council parks, including Jubilee Park Deep in St James. And Councillor Reid, would you like to present, please?
Thank you very much, Chairman. In introducing this, the request to include on the agenda this item was also requested by Councillor Baxter. The report outlines the corporate plan key action and targets in relation to green flags. Positive progress is being made against these, which include the Queen Elizabeth Park achieving green class status for the first time this year, and Wyndham Park securing green flag status for the 10th year. It's understood to be eligible to apply for green flag status, the land needs to be designated as a public park. More information is awaited on the process for doing this, but early indications are that it should not be too difficult to do so. To that end, Madam Chairman, under 1.6 of the report, there was concern about the eligibility for Jubilee Park at Deeping St James, and I'm pleased to be able to report that that is now not going to be a problem, and it will be adjusted with a little extra provision. This is again new to my portfolio, but it's good news to be able to include the query that's been raised. More significantly, robust park management plans and strong community engagement is a key component of successfully achieving green flag status, which often takes time and money to develop. The committee is asked to consider the options and provide a direction on any next steps. I look forward to listening to those suggestions. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor Dilks.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the positive comments that I've got to say were not quite so positive in the report. Can I first of all sort of note and congratulate the fact that we've doubled the number of green flags in South Kesterton in the past year from 1 to 2. And I know that the target is that we're going to get 3 next year, but you'll not be surprised to hear me say that I'm rather disappointed that they're all in Grantham. Are there no parks in Stamford or Bourne or the Deepings, i.e. Jubilee Park, that could qualify for these flags? So I noticed that we've got 2. If you look at Nottingham City has got 68 green flag parks green flag awards this year, 68 versus 2. I think we've got a long way to go. So my first thing is to say we really should be looking at this corporate plan policy and recommending in my view, from this committee that we really should be a little bit more ambitious, I would have thought, in how many green flags we want to get. When I did first read the report and I got to 1.6 and it said Deep and St James Jubilee Park's not eligible to apply because it's not really a park, I kind of thought, I wonder if the real reason is that it's not in Grantham, that it doesn't qualify. And then when I look at paragraph 1.6, I think, where on earth did that come from? Who actually ever thought that Jubilee Park, because it's not actually a park, it's a public open space, is not eligible? I have to say, Madam Chairman, that is complete rubbish. And anybody who looks up, you only have to look up the web, as I've just done, and I've got it in front of me. It says the Green Flag Award, and this is on their website, and there's a book that you can download or just read off your screen. And so it says that any green space that is freely accessible to the public and has a site-specific management plan is eligible to apply for a Green Flag Award. Now, it took me 2 minutes to look that up. And I just expect better, I've got to say, in the reports to say it's not eligible. Jubilee Park's not eligible. It is eligible. And if you look at the list that says what's got Green Flag Awards include parks, green spaces, cemeteries, crematoria, recreation grounds, canals, reservoirs, hospital grounds, housing estates, nature reserves, allotments. That's the starting point. It goes on. And so I just think, we kind of, I'm not sure, who looked that up or didn't look it up. But, Green Flag Awards, we're not talking about the Green Flag Breakdown Service. This is, it's run by Keep Britain Tidy. It's a really good system. And, if I look at if I hear what the portfolio, the cabinet member says, quite rightly, there is a cost to it. Well, why is all the costs why are the costs only going to Grantham? Why aren't they going across the, South Kesteven, if there are financial implications? And I know paragraph 7.1 says, the financial considerations of applying for green flag status need to be carefully considered, of course, and approved before they can. At this time, it's not possible to cost the potential financial implications of any such application. Well, I've got to say, read the web. It's got a scale of how much it costs to apply.
Councillor Dukes, can I just I was going to make this statement a bit later, but I'm going to say it now, just in respect to you kind of saying that they haven't had time to collate the information. This agenda item was kind of added as quoted by the Constitution at late point. I myself, as the chair and the vice chair, meet with the sorry, I've lost my thought.
Sure.
Meet with thank you, officers regularly to bring agendas to the fore, so that they are prepared and all the information is here. Yes, you have every right, any member does have every right, to quote the Constitution, to get an agenda item onto our agenda. But I also want to say, but I work in very open and transparent manner. And really, if people approach me for the work plan, it fits within our remit and the corporate plan, that they will be allowed onto our agenda. However, to keep criticising the amount of information here when we only had 2.5 weeks notice, I'm a bit upset about, really. The officers worked really hard with the plan we'd already set many weeks ago in the process of planning the committee. So yes, the information is available, and if we'd had maybe more time it would have been a fuller report. But I mean, there's many areas of this report that I'm a bit confused at. I do know that Grantham has very good community support to the parks that have been awarded the green flag. They're very, very active. And I know the Dysart Park Committee are very active as well within that. So it just so happens that the two that have been awarded and one that is working towards the green flag are very, very active community members that take the lead in all this. I am not criticising or commenting about the Jubilee area, I'm really not, but I just know that there is no need to criticise the people, the volunteers and the officers that have worked to get the green flag status. And yes, let's have more ambition. You know, let's get more flags within our areas. And I'm more than aware that, you know, SK is more than Grantham. You know, I do appreciate that. As a Grantham councillor, we hear it all the time, but Grantham is also part of SKDC. And I do try to be fair. I'm so sorry. I just needed to make that point at this point. I was going to wait and discuss this at the work plan section. So I'm so sorry to interrupt, and please come back.
No, thank you for allowing me to come back. Sorry, I'm not criticising you, or Grantham. I started by congratulating Grantham on getting the green flag set, but it's a start. That's what. Let's agree that it's a start. My criticism is that the report is not accurate. Paragraph 1.6 says Deep in Jubilee Park is not currently eligible. It is eligible. Okay, that's a fact. Well, unless the information on the web that the Keep Britain Tidy group, you know, is the people who run the thing, but it's in a book. It says download the book. Okay. And secondly, at this time, it is not possible to cost the potential financial implications. I would say that is at least questionable. They are on there, and a park or open space up to 20 hectares. The cost is £339. I then also looked on a Bristol website that said the local council there was paying, I think, £139 or something of that order, and they got a number of parks themselves. I don't know if you get a discount for a large number. That's the only point I'm making. It's just that the information that's come to the council is not accurate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dilks. I'll go to Councillor Reid first, if I may.
Okay, right. Well, in all fairness, Councillor Dilks, I did point out to you that with a little adjustment, Jubilee Park was to be included. I've listened to your points, and I would like to conclude that they are noted and they'll be taken into consideration on the way forward for the green flag status. Yet again, this is something that's changed portfolio, and it's been with me, 6 weeks, along with a whole list of other things. But it is noted, and it is something that our residents can get behind, promote, be involved, and actually feel valued in what's achieved, what's maintained, and in the communities they live. So I get all of that. I understand that, and we'll look for a wider inclusion in the way forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes.
I'm just going to go to Gary Smith first, Councillor Dilks, and then I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Councillor Mantfield. Just to reiterate, the report timescales were turned around very tightly. It was just a few days, matter of days, that was provided in order for the report to be pulled together for the deadlines for the circulation, approvals, and publication of the report. So it was written. I just want to make clear it was written in good faith, and people worked hard to try and get it to the committee in time. Because of that very light timescale, there were. It is very light on detail. In terms of the financial elements, thought it would be helpful to mention that for Grantham, that the budgetary elements come from the special expense area, so that it's a different budgetary component, and particularly because there's not a town council for Grantham, there are slightly different arrangements around the parks, which is why there is a greater emphasis on the district council's role with them. In terms of the financial comments that referred to, it wasn't really referring to the cost of the application, which, as you say, are very simple and clear, and actually pretty reasonable. It's more about the financial costs of the production of a management plan any remedial or improvement works and facilities for the park, and supporting and helping to develop the community engagement, which I think actually is already fairly strong at Jubilee Park, but it was really on that wider financial implication that section was referring to, not the application for the Green Flag Award itself. But thank you very much.
Councillor Dilks, I'll come back to you.
You're very kind. And just to say thank you for those comments and Councillor Reid's comments. I'd be happy to make a proposal if that's helpful, and it would be that we that actually the corporate plan, it's a recommendation that the corporate plan is revisited to actually include, although it does say and other relevant areas. I would just like to, and maybe it isn't necessary to go back to the corporate plan, but to actually say as a motion that, as we do on a number of issues, as I think we've just done on the water fountains, that the council investigates, the possibility or the feasibility of increasing the green flag status awards by at least one in each of the other towns, i.e. Bourne and Stamford and Market Deeping, plus Jubilee Park in Deeping St James. And actually, if we're writing to parish councils about the sand or the water or whatever else we write, we should ask if there's anywhere where they think. I don't know if there are other, because it isn't just parks. It's open spaces. It could be the hills and holes in Barnock, for example. I think that would be an excellent green flag. I don't know. I'm surprised it hasn't already got one. Is it in Peterborough? Sorry, I thought it was ours. But it's not ours. Okay. We don't need one there then. But so, can that motion sort of helpful or not?
Yes. Can I come back to you, Councillor Dilks? Because Gary Smith and there's a couple of other councillors just want to kind of make comment first. So yeah, Gary.
Thank you. Yeah, it was just to clarify. I mean, as you say, theoretically, it's possible for any area that there's a wide scope there. But I emphasise again, it's that key emphasis around a clear management plan, real community engagement, those sorts of things. In terms of particularly Stamford and Bourne, the large typical areas that you would consider for green flag status aren't within SKDC's management or control or ownership. They're with the town council. So I'm just highlighting it's different in each area. So it's really whether it's the district council's role in those areas. It's not quite necessarily the right approach to take for each of the four towns, but I'll just make the point that there are different responsibilities, ownerships, management arrangements in each of those areas, which again is partly why we're in this situation, notwithstanding Jubilee Park, which the council, district council does support.
So that's why Grantham is so different, because we don't have a town council. You see, we have to kind of rely on, not rely, that's the wrong word. We embrace SKDC slightly different. There we go. Yeah, one sec. Thank you. Councillor Wheeler, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I think Gary's already answered my question, because obviously Stamford has beautiful green spaces, but I suspect that we need to do it through the town council, Gloria, don't we?
In actual fact, we are working towards a green flag award for the recreation ground already. So we're nearly there, actually. We're nearly there.
Councillor Westrop.
Thank you. The point about the finances actually was what I was going to suggest, was that, well, it might cost a minimal amount to actually put the application in, the cost around it. So I'm actually glad there isn't a number put in here, because I think it would have been misleading anyway. Obviously in the corporate plan, it's to 2023 and we've got other relevant areas. Do we have a list of potential other relevant areas? I know we discussed a couple that are happening, but do we know the broader plan of who's wanting to go for what and things already, or is it made up as we go along?
Gary?
There is no direct next in line or shortlist in that sense. No, the emphasis was on the three areas, again, linked to where funding is applied. So it was about future opportunities if funding was made available.
Councillor Dilks, I'm going to come back to you for a proposal, should you wish. I'm just thinking, because of the way that the different town councils kind of work, maybe we should just look at this as an individual rather than kind of, we can promote other areas into going for it. I'll leave that with you. Councillor Wheeler?
Well, I was going to say we could perhaps amend the motion to say work with the relevant parish council.
Chairman, that's exactly what I was going to say, and I really welcome that. And I welcome the comments. That's what we're here for, you know, to hear other people's views, and I welcome those. And I think we can move forward. And it may be, you know, that it's not possible for us to promote these other areas as green flag. I'd be disappointed if that was the case, and I'd want to know the reasons why. But you know, I would like, you know, to have this investigated, the feasibility, you know, whether it is feasible for, you know, to get more green flags for South Kesterton, and certainly working with the parishes and the town councils would be helpful in that regard. And so I would ask for that to happen, and for it to report back, and maybe in the March meeting again.
That's lovely. So I think we've got a proposal from Councillor Dilks. Do we have a second? We have a second. Can we take a vote, please? Lovely, thank you. And I do propose that we bring this back to the March meeting as well for any updates or clarity or where we're up to. That'd be great. Thank you. Right, moving on. Agenda item 15, the work programme. I have kind of already said this, but I do just want to make this point that we do work and plan for these meetings to the best of our ability, and time is always of an essential factor in getting a full report with the information. I am very open. Please email me if you have anything that fits within our remit and within the corporate plan. Please just ask me. It just makes for a friendlier working environment to achieve the best for our residents. That's what we're here to do. And I love our committee. I like the fact that we do have a really good discussion around most or every kind of item. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate that, you know, that a lot of planning goes in, not just myself, really not, but, you know, the officers behind the scenes, you know, they do spend a lot of time preparing and chasing and doing, you know, the full work really. So please, you know, please contact me, please contact Gloria, you know, we are here to make this committee run the best really. So thank you for that. And so moving on to the work plan. We have just filled 2 items for March the 8th, which I keep questioning, but that is our next scheduled meeting. We have a few things that kind of we could have updates on and our ongoing projects. They're in your agenda pack of 225, page 225, I should say. So if anyone's got anything pressing now, Gary?
I put my hand up when you said anything, and then you said pressing. So, happy if anyone has anything pressing they want to come in with first.
No, you're welcome, Gary. It's fine. If you have anything.
Thank you. It was just to say that the depot item was on there, and the future unscheduled items, and it may be that it would be a timely point at that point to bring forward a bit of a progress update. It really is more or less for information, but it is a substantial project for the council, so that may be a sensible one. The other point I was just going to say is that there may well be an item on performance that you'd want, Ben, sorry.
It was really a question as to whether or not it goes as an individual item or whether we do it via email ahead of the committee, but we spoke in the performance item about the specification for the ESK and the indicators for that action. But okay, it's happened. Sorry.
That's fine. Any committee members? Councillor Dilks.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, forgive me, I'm just not sure about this, but is the climate change update, is that is that a standing item on our agenda? I'm just not quite sure of the status of where it belongs now.
Given
Sorry,
councillors, I think we have a yearly review and then we ask for updates should and when we feel we need. Is that correct, Gary?
It is, in theory. In practice, we've basically ended up doing a climate change update to every meeting, and we'd be happy to do another one if you would like in March.
Madam Chairman, I'm very happy with that. It was just I wasn't sure now where the responsibility, if I could put that, it is within the overview and scrutiny committees now. It is with us, isn't it? Yes. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really important one, Serena, to kind of, even like you did today, a verbal update really of where we are. I do think it keeps it in the forefront of the council's kind of business, if that makes sense. So yeah, I would quite like that to be on kind of a regular committee agenda, really. Councillor Reid, did you
only
want to comment?
Sort of comment that climate change is now under the portfolio holder of the leader, and I would have thought that you would have wanted some inclusion as to a progress report, and that ought to be, particularly since your next meeting is in March, ought to be agended, and that he should be updating you.
Yes, good idea, Councillor Reid. We will pop that on, please. Thank you, Amy.
I would certainly welcome that, as given the scrutiny review has sort of seemed to suggest that, you know, we weren't holding the leader to account as perhaps we ought to be. Thank you.
Lovely. If there's no other items for this one, that's exactly leads on lovely to agenda item 16, which is what I just want to kind of discuss. We've all been through a scrutiny and kind of investigation, is that the wrong word? And it was kind of suggested that we go back to having a pre-meeting. Now, I know we have done this for this committee. This is why I want your opinion, that we would use it slightly different to kind of gather our thoughts and then kind of ask relevant questions, to use the time within the scrutiny forum committees as such. I'm easy either way. If we feel it's going to be beneficial to the committee and beneficial for the time spent within the chamber, I'm happy for that to restart. I personally, not as chair, has reservations that we discuss it in a closed door, that therefore it's not open in a public meeting, that the questions that are important we kind of answer between ourselves and then are asked within here. So I kind of sit on the fence. However, because we've gone through that, and I don't really know what the broad kind of thought of the council as a result of that kind of looking at scrutiny is going to be, I just thought as chair that I would kind of take a bit of a lead maybe and just see how our committee feels about it. Any opinions? Councillor Johnson.
I don't know about anybody else, but I think in this forum we discuss it really well. And I don't think it'll make any change or any difference going behind closed doors for half an hour before we come in this chamber. This committee is open, totally open. So that's how I don't think it's necessary personally.
Thank you. Councillor Westropp.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I think if we do end up meeting beforehand, you don't ask the same questions in the open forum. And I think it's really important that the questions that we've asked today have been asked. You know, yes, we may go off on a slight tangent, but actually that's never a bad thing either. So
that's great. It literally just was a discussion point that I wanted to have. So we'll keep it as it is currently and see what kind of comes down from others. All right, that's lovely. I've got no other business. So thank you for your attendance today. Thank you for a great meeting as always. And